Welcome to Nightmare Junkie. In today's video, we will be listening to 3 disturbing Home Alone scary stories. Turn down the lights, lock your doors and windows and get yourself comfortable, because these stories are gonna creep you out. Number 1. I grew up down in the middle of nothing. My parents ran a farm. Thus, a gravel road literally led up to the farmhouse where we resided. I believe I was 14 at the time. Nearing midnight, the time had come. I was alone at home on this particular night. With Pooh Bear, our long-time family dog, I was watching a movie from our couch in the living room. He wasn't the most energetic dog because of his advancing years, but he could comfortably watch a whole movie on the couch with me without moving. When Pooh Bear's ears abruptly closed and its head twisted around as we were watching the movie, I turned the TV off. I didn't hear anything myself. I maintained a laser-like focus in this one area. It was in the direction of the home's entrance. My initial thought was that there was a knock on the door, but given the location of the house, this was simply absurd. To get to our residence, you must make a significant effort. We've probably never had a visitor arrive at our house who wasn't invited. And like out here, something like this just doesn't happen. I dismissed it as nothing more than an animal and increased the TV's volume. The Pooh Bear started quietly grumbling shortly after I did, still casting my gaze in the same general area. I'd heard this dog snarl maybe 5 previous times in the time I'd known him. By this time, I reasoned that I had to at the very least go investigate whatever was out there. I approached the front door after grabbing one of our family's firearms. When I opened it, I found nothing. I proceeded to descend the porch steps. I looked outside into the night when I was about 30 yards from the front porch. Nothing except pitch black nothing. I then made a U-turn. Before stopping myself, I took one step back in the direction of the house. A man was curled up in the fetal position and sitting on the edge of the deck. He appeared to be making an effort to conceal himself. I remained still while I tried to come up with my next move. I wasn't going to approach this man side by side. I turned and approached the back entrance. We always left our doors unlocked, so it wasn't locked. Around here, we don't frequently have to worry about it. However, as soon as I was inside, I hurried back to the front door and closed it. I then repeated the process for all of the house's windows and doors. After I phoned the police, they didn't show up for an entire hour. They looked all over the property but came up empty-handed. This provided some reassurance. Sincerely, a part of me began to consider. I was only imagining seeing the man. I ultimately made the decision to just go to bed after the police had departed. The following morning I rise and head downstairs to the kitchen to begin preparing breakfast. One of the knives was missing, and when I went to get a knife to chop some fruit, I couldn't help but notice. I just stood there perplexed. The previous evening, I was positive it was there. I decided to make another police call after developing a nasty feeling. When 2 officers arrived, I instructed them to search the residence this time. I watched from outside as they worked. The 2 officers returned outside a little while later, carrying an elderly man in handcuffs. Under the basement stairs, a man was discovered holding a knife in each hand. It was the kitchen knife that was missing. After a brief, protracted fight, the man was taken into custody. This was the same man who told police everything and then hid outside. They surmised that he most likely entered the house through the front door while I circled the house and entered through the back door. From what I know, the man said nothing when questioned about what he was doing out here or what he had planned by the fact that he grabbed the knife couldn't imply anything good. I frequently consider what might have happened if the man had continued his search of the house that evening and discovered me in bed. Number 2. The height of the summer has passed. My younger brother was 7 years old, and I was 10 years old. When the sun started to set, we were still outside playing games with other kids from our area before heading inside. Now maybe once a week, my brother and I would be left alone at home while our parents went to a different restaurant nearby. The majority of the time, they would let us know before leaving, but if we were outside playing, there were times when they would simply leave us alone. We assumed this was the case when we returned home, and no one was there. There was a note on the kitchen counter confirming this. I went to the living room with my brother to watch TV. Something we frequently did before going to bed. It was absolutely black outside once more after a half hour. The doorbell rang, and then there was a knocking right then. My first assumption was that our parents were returning, but the fact that they were using the front door and didn't even have a key to it was certainly out of the ordinary. Even though I knew it was still possible, the likelihood of the garage door opener breaking down and then missing a key was extremely unlikely. So I got up and went to the front door to check who it was after leaving the living room. I could hear a man shouting that he was selling Girl Scout cookies as I got closer to the door. Considering the time of day, I was quite perplexed. I scanned the crowd and noticed an adult man standing completely by himself without a cookie in his palm or his daughter's, as I had anticipated. The man shouted again and then put his hand on the doorknob. While I remembered that we hadn't locked the door when entering for the night, my heart sank. When the door handle slowly began to turn, I swiftly set the deadlock in motion. A clicking noise resounded. It was too obtrusive. The man had obviously heard it and now realized someone was inside. The man was now staring straight at my younger brother through our living room window, who was oblivious to what was happening. Furthermore, from his current position, close the blinds and I can see a revolver holstered on his left side of his waist from the living room. I suggested to my brother that we go downstairs to the basement and have some ice cream. I had to keep him away from any windows, but I was afraid he would panic if he found out what was going on. We went downstairs after he gave his consent. Behind us, I quietly secured the cellar door. After finishing our ice cream, I heard the hum of the garage door opening from upstairs, which indicated that my parents had returned. I told them what had happened afterwards, away from my brother. They phoned the police naturally because they were horrified. The front doors were obviously tampered with when the police arrived to conduct their inspection, which proved the individual had malicious intent and was attempting to break in. But what are you going to do when he gets inside? I am unable to be certain. The police cannot either. He was never given a name. My younger brother is still unaware of the events surrounding this incident. Number 3. Soon after I became 15 years old, this event occurred. My parents had given me a PlayStation for my birthday. Even better, I got my own monitor so I could play it in my room. I naturally spent a lot of time up there in the weeks after my birthday, since my room was upstairs. On a Saturday evening, I was conversing with 2 of my school classmates in a PlayStation party chat. I was living alone at home because both of my parents were away for the weekend at a business convention. I had my headphone volume pretty loud. It was during a pause in our conversation in the chat that I heard a thumping sound coming from downstairs. Any unusual sound causes your mind to immediately imagine the worst, as anyone who has ever been left alone at home as a child will attest. I removed one pair of headphones from my ear and turned the volume down. For the following 5 minutes, nothing happened, but then I soon heard the rumbling once more. This time, when I mentioned it to my 2 pals, they both urged me to see what it was I was hearing. My hair on my arms started to stand to attention. I was getting an uneasy feeling. My friend jokes that it could be someone breaking into your home. During the next break in our game, I promised to go check, and I laughed. When it happened, I removed my headphones and began to move gently in the direction of the stairs. I started down them, and then I started to hear whispers. I was only halfway down the stairs when I completely froze up. I intently listened, trying to make out whether what I was hearing was actually real or not. I eventually knelt down to have a peek into the living room. I noticed 4 adult men going around in silence while fully clothed in black. Sincerely, I was unable to comprehend what I was seeing. I only knew that I needed to return upstairs. Naturally, when I carefully began to creep back up them, one of the stamps let out a loud cracking sound that reverberated throughout the entire house before being silent again. My heart begins beating faster and faster. I knew at that point that locking myself in my room would be a clear indication that I was there. I made sure to lock the door, and then went and hid in the restroom farther down the corridor with the lights off and the doors slightly ajar. As I sat in solitude, I could hear many pairs of boots gently ascending the steps. They persisted in becoming louder until I could hear banging on the door of my bedroom down the hall. Not banging, but banging as if they were attempting to gain my attention. It was obvious that whoever was doing it was attempting to smash the door in. Voices began shrieking at me, telling me to open the door if I didn't want anything horrible to happen to me, among other things. I was utterly appalled. I could feel the sweat on my hands, and my adrenaline was pumping through my body like a runaway locomotive. I sprang up and frantically began to open the bathroom window. I think I made too much noise, because as soon as the bathroom window opened, I heard a pair of boots start moving down the hallway. I was able to jump out the window, but I landed hard on the ground. I didn't feel any pain though, probably due to the adrenaline coursing through me. Even though I had a nasty landing, I was still able to turn around and see the bathroom window. A black silhouette turned to face me while remaining still. 3 males came sprinting out of the backyard door towards me. I attempted to stand up and sprint, but I was unsuccessful. I was so scared I couldn't move. They all started to grab me and then dragged me back toward the house. I tried getting loose from them, but they were too strong. At that very moment, I heard the sound of police sirens. Immediately I knew I would be okay. All 3 men came to a standstill. They looked at each other for which seemed like forever. They then sprinted to the backyard fence, climbed it, and I never saw them again. A few moments later, the police show up in the backyard. I told them which way the men had gone, to which a couple of officers started off in that direction, while another stayed with me. The only man that was caught that night was the one inside the house. The other 3 that ran were never found. As police were asking me questions, my 2 friends I was playing PlayStation with then pulled into the driveway on their bikes. Even to this day, I still routinely thank them for calling the cops, as it likely saved my life. Found left behind in the house were 4 different knives and a couple of fully loaded pistols. This event still haunts me to this day.